Hi, my name's Richard Miller. I'm one of the authors on this blog, and I wanted to, this is my first little attempt really to speak in this way on the blog. It's a bit scary, you know, it goes out there to the world, but anyway, I was a public sector worker for 30 odd years and active in the union movement for close to that long. But I wanted to comment a little bit. I read the Wall Street Journal today, you know, the new Boeing Pact wins cost controls. And I wrote a piece a couple of days ago after the vote Friday, where by 1% they voted up a contract, the Boeing workers did, the IAM workers. They voted up a contract that they'd rejected a month ago. This contract is in line with everything that's been going on. The cost controls are wages, their pensions, they have a defined benefit like I do. I had a defined benefit pension, and the bosses want to shift you to the marketplace. So anyway, they've got I always forget the name without looking, and I didn't take notes. But anyway, I think the most important thing is to look at why the Wall Street Journal says today that there's a deep divide. After this contract was accepted Friday, there's a deep divide, but within the IAM. But what happened a month ago by 63%, I think it was, to 28 or 30, a huge margin, they voted down this contract. So what happened in a month? Well, what happened is the voting down a contract is the first step of rejecting attempts by the bosses to undermine our standard of living. Every worker knows that. But they rejected the contract. The bosses, their media, the Democratic politicians, because we're talking here about a major US industrial manufacturer, the airline manufacturer, the Democratic politicians of Washington State, the governor, the state senator and others, the media, their media, and the international leadership of the IAM and the union movement in general got together and decided we got to get this vote overturned. So the international leadership came in, overruled the local leadership, which opposed this contract, forced another contract, and the workers, after what I call an economic onslaught, terrorism for a month, after economic terrorism, the workers saw no way out, and hell, let's keep what we have. What they did, they went after them in the media. And immediately after they rejected that contract a month ago, Boeing said, okay, we're going to move the plant. They put out bids to other states, which they bid between the states to get the lowest workers. If they can, they'd move abroad. That's what they do. A guy the other day was telling me about how China is destroying America with cheap labor. Well, you know what? They're moving from China to Vietnam, Cambodia, and places like that. That's what global capitalism is. It finds the cheapest human being it can. We're too expensive. So anyway, they're gloating in the Wall Street Journal about that today, and that's what's happened over the past month. They went on a war. They went on an open warfare on the workers there. They did the same here with the BART strike recently. Another set of workers that have tremendous ability to stop their profit taking, to stop this economy running in the interests of working people. The union leaders at BART refused to mobilize, to link up with the community. You had two of the unions in the same international. One leadership told their members to scab on another. Members know that that's not the right thing to do. Fighting your own leaders as well as the employers is complicated. They didn't do that, so they lost. We've seen this now for decades. The younger people won't remember. In the 80s, there were attempts by sections of the US working class, organised labour, to fight back against neoliberalism, against Reagan and his assault on working people. We had two Greyhound strikes, the Hormel strike in Austin, Minnesota, which was a civil war. We had the Eastern strike, the Teamsters Detroit newspaper strike. There was an attempt to drive back the offensive of big business. In the 90s, we had the Staley struggle. If I remember Pittston, they occupied the mines in Fatigues. We've had attempts by workers to fight back And these have been defeated primarily, despite local leaderships making mistakes, primarily through a powerful combination of the employers, the bosses, and the union leadership at the highest levels. That's what drove back this offensive. The local leaderships, things could have been done, I'll get into that in a minute. But the thing is, through that there have been, the battlefield is littered, and I know some of them, older workers. One comes into mind who served 3 terms in Vietnam. He was involved in the Staley struggle, in the Decatur, Illinois battle, and he was a leader there. The battlefield is littered with workers, local leaders, activists, guys that were on the shop floor and just got forced into battle by the employer's offensive. The battlefield is littered with people that have been defeated, have become demoralized, were just worn out, have found taken a different path in life because they saw no way out. There was nowhere to go. And the local leadership up in Seattle has opposed this strike. I quoted him in my piece a couple of days ago. A spokesman for the district lodge says, he attacked the media and the interfering in the vote and interfering in their members, influencing his members. He says, our members have spoken after the Friday vote to accept the contract. He says, our members have spoken. This is the course we will take, he said. Well, they spoke under duress. It would, Scottish friends of mine talk about they're going to vote this year on whether they break from the Union of the UK, which is like a 300-year-old agreement or something. And my Scottish friends say, well, it was an agreement under duress. And it's like a terrorist group or a fundamentalist group that captures an American or a Western tourist or a soldier or a politician or something, and that person confesses to the evils of us, whatever. Behind him there's a guy blindfolded with a machete. Nobody's going to believe that confession. This vote was taken after a month-long savage media and political war against the Boeing workers. It's an illegitimate vote. They'd already rejected it. We should commend the local leadership for opposing it. But what you cannot, and I was in this position in 1997 in a contract that I took back. I'm a rank and file guy, a negotiator, and we took back a contract to the members. Three of us didn't support the contract, but we accepted that we could not tell our members to vote against this contract and leave it there. You can't cover your own backside and say, well, I didn't support it as a leader, and offer no alternative. You have to put forward an alternative. And that's what we did. And the local leadership up there, by opposing this contract, we should commend them. But that you can't just say, well, they've spoken. They haven't spoken. They've spoken under threats of terror from the employers and their allies in the top of the labour movement. Here's what the steps we have to take. We have to put a stop to this. The most important thing, and this is what sort of failed in the 80s. I remember going to a rank and file committee, a conference against concessions. There was a rank and file committee against concessions. I don't know where it ended up, but it was an attempt to build a national movement. We have to build a national movement. The capitalists are national. They're international. They don't care what country they go to. They exploit workers no matter where they are. They have no love for us either. The Boeing ownership of Boeing, the faceless people that own Boeing, would have no qualms killing workers to save their profits. And they point out in this article the huge profits they've made selling the Boeing 777. So the local leadership can start this ball rolling. The local leadership up in Seattle, they should call a press conference. They should openly condemn the international leadership of the unions for assisting the employers, for forcing an illegitimate vote on their members, and for joining with the employers and driving down the wages and working conditions of their members and destroying the future for young people. They should openly condemn them. We've had the Longview struggle up there where they played the same role, the leadership. We've had the battles in the 80s where they played the same role. We had the Cleveland 5, the UAW members in North Carolina at a Freightliner plant. The UAW leadership helped terminate members of a local leadership that try to fight back. We have the Accuride, that's also an auto issue. Rank and file workers that are not involved don't know these, but those of us that are do. that we've had the Kokomo workers in Chrysler plant in Kokomo that rejected a concessionary contract. The UAW leadership came in, waged a war to force them to accept it. This has gone on time and time again. What they can do up there and to start the ball rolling, call a press conference. They should contact Sharma Sawant, who was sworn in today at Seattle City Council, the first socialist, the only socialist city council member as far as I know. Contact her, contact that campaign, call a joint press conference. She's the only politician that has offered an alternative, that the Boeing workers take over the factory and run it on a democratic basis. That's generally what she's called for. No one else has called for that. And they should call a press conference, announce that they're going to call and organize a conference. And that conference, the goal of that conference should be to build a national and indeed international network to organize and to fight back against the 1%, the capitalist class, the rich, the super rich, whatever we want. We know what they are. To fight back against their attempts to drive us back to conditions that existed before the civil rights movement and before the CIO and the rise of the industrial movement, the unionism before it. That's the first step. They should link up with, there's all of those workers and leaders that are victims, or so we say victims, that are not victims, is a word I'm trying to think of, but a result of those defeats that gave their lives and fought in those defeats. There's the more recent ones at Longview. There's dissenting groups in numerous union battles. There's no cohesive national body to bring us together that can, wherever the bosses strike, whether it's a rural post office that closes in South Carolina, whether it's an attack on the Boeing workers, whether it's an attack on immigrant workers, whether it's an attack on low-wage workers, that we coordinate offensive, national offensive. They're national, they're international, we have to be that way. And I mean, I was looking here, and the other thing is we built unions to take us out of competition. We didn't build unions in our history. The people that built our unions, it wasn't the mafia, contrary to what Hollywood says. They didn't build unions in order to help us facilitate competition among each other. They built them to protect us from the market and advance our interests. The governor of Washington State says in here, he says it'll be a wonderful day when all the states can agree they won't have to compete with one another in any incentive program. But that's not the real world right now. Well, it's not the real world. But you know what? The real world in the 50s was Jim Crow. That's changed. Racism hasn't gone. Capitalism won't eliminate that. Not at all. It's too divisive and useful to them. But Jim Crow has gone, although it's re-emerging. The real world then was Jim Crow. The real world in the 30s were no unions. The real world in the 30s was spying on workers, was company towns, was Pinkertons. The American working class put a stop to that. So we reject the real world. He doesn't reject. It's the difference between a revolutionary and a fighter and a militant and a genuine rank and file person that fights for working people. No matter what they think their philosophy is. It's the difference between this Democratic Party, this party of the Wall Street, this politician, and those of us that want to change things. And we can start to change things. And with this, we've got to start somewhere. Our young people are going to have no future. The planet will have no future. And so I wanted to say a few of these things as opposed to writing. That's what I think should be the first step for the local leadership up there. Call that press conference, hook up with Sharma Sawant, build that campaign, call a national conference, and let's go from there. And let's put an end to the gloating by the coupon clippers that own, they don't even own factories anymore. They own holding companies. They don't even know what they own. We have a proud history in this country. We fought the most ruthless, from the native people that fought them, from the black people that fought them, from all workers, immigrant workers from Europe that fought for the right to unions and to a decent life. We fought the most ruthless ruling class on earth in this country. The only ruling class that's ever dropped nuclear weapons on civilian populations in Japan. So anyway, if you want to contact us and give us some questions, we want to try, and I want to try and learn to do this more efficiently. There's an address on the side. Also, if you can send us any money, if you read us regularly, we do have some expenses, do that. And let's look forward to building a future together and building a working class movement that can drive back the boss's offensive.